Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The topic of patterns and how one deals with them in Vedanta is an advanced topic. Yeah, because in the beginning one doesn't even know that there are patterns. So ingrained they are that they are confused to be one's nature. So there's the overlay of the nature, which is what? Satchidananda. And the Satchidananda is free to sport these patterns. Very sporting of it. But if this is not understood, we take the game too seriously. One takes the game too seriously and one feels that overlay, or that as though patina, which is, what is the word for patina in Sanskrit? Adhyasa. Adhyaropa. That is more appropriate when we talk of rope and snake. Ropa. Ropa and sneka. So, what is interesting is that the patina is seen to be the reality by the observers outside, the people who interact with the veneered jiva, and by the observer inside too. Here, the observer, we are not talking of the Sakshi per se, but the Ahankara, which says, this is who I am. How many times, people say this? How many times, this word is familiar. This is what I am. I am as I am. Take me or leave me. This is who I am. And then when you unpack, this is who I am, it's amazing what all comes out. Comes out means doesn't really belong. Totally, laughable if one is in a position to laugh. Or one can have a good cry over it first before getting to the place of laughing. And, so therefore this is an advanced topic, because in the beginning that overlay is not noticed. And yesterday we talked about samskarya, the action of cleaning the copper pot. But suppose the copper pot is tarnished and there's not a tamarind in sight to clean it, or a rind of a lemon, and it is, let us also assume, in conversation with, in the company of other equally tarnished copper pots, it has no way of knowing that this is even a patina, that this doesn't belong. This is not I. In fact, Anatma has as though taken over the Atma of the copper pot, the Anatma in the form of the tarnish, which is a result in the case of the copper pot, due to exposure to the various elements. How we wish that was the case for the human being also. It would be convenient. As long as I'm in an insulated vacuum cupboard, I'm okay. And it is the fault of all the elements and the people around that are making me tarnished. And so they need this lecture on how not to contribute to all these patinas and tarnishes. I don't need this lecture because I'm okay. And I wish it was so convenient. I wish it was like that so that we didn't have to worry about it. We can just point the finger, moving finger. And then when all else fails, you point it up. I don't know why up. They think Bhagavan is up somewhere, up on high. So that's why this is an advanced topic. Because the hope and the expectation, I suppose, for one to be even interested in this topic and to want to listen to this is that one is in a place of recognizing that there is a patina. That's enough for us. That there is a patina, paterna, whatever it is. And B, even though one may not know immediately what it is and how, it manifests all the time, there is a willingness to be able to observe it dispassionately. These are the two criteria that come a little later in the study. And this is in the case of the adhikaris. Adhikari means a person who is qualified for this study, equipped with everything that we have studied so far, a resolved mind, this, that, so many things. And if we look at the ancient texts, Upanishads, Puranas, etc., and if we look at the adhikaris that we encounter there, we see that there is a slight difference. And what is the difference? So, they seem to be what in the Shastra is called Uttama Adhikari. Uttama means exalted adhikaris, meaning, that before they come to the teacher, the patina is not just recognized but eliminated. This is Uttama Adhikari. So there's no point in talking of, patinas because it's not there. Why spend time talking of something that's not there? So they come, brilliant as the sun, and the teacher, of course, is brilliant as the sun, and the teacher recognizes the brilliance, and they shine together. Tejasvinau adhitam astu. This is what we pray. Except it doesn't sound like that because the grammar, sandhis are different. It may not even sound familiar unless I chant it like this. Tejasvinavadhitamastu. Now, I know that. I have heard of that. Actually, it is Tejasvi now, which means right now. No. Now it means for us. Adhitam, our studies, may the studies for us. Tejasvi astu adhitam, may our studies be brilliant. This is, it is a prayer, an expressed desire for the teacher and the student to work in harmony for the teaching to take place, so that there is brilliance all over. So in the ancient times, there was not the need for this so much, perhaps, as we see from the Upanishads. Because, I'm not trying to set up some kind of a romantic past, some spiritual romantic past. It was wonderful then, and what's wrong with us now? And no. So the reference to the ancient times is because we have the Upanishads, which talk about adhikaris who were slightly different from the kinds that we encounter now. And that's because the Upanishad deals with the ideal types, so that we have a standard to follow. And that's important, because part of the problem in Kali Yuga, in the current day, is not having role models to follow. The leadership is lacking. To say the least. Everywhere you look, there is so much wanting. There's so much one is missing. And so therefore, the Upanishads give us a Maitreyi. Upanishads give us Gargi, Lopamudra, Yajnavalkya, Shvetaketu, Narada, all these people that they are not meant for comparison. When we start comparing ourselves to Shvetaketu, there is reason for depression. Immediately. Because by modern standards, Shvetaketu needed only 9 classes before he said he understood completely. Only 9 classes, because after the first class, what we consider class, that only was 3 sentences, but let's be generous over here. By the time it's unpacked and unfolded and everything, okay, 1 class. He said to his father, who turned into his teacher, Bhuya eva Bhagavan Vijñapayatu. Please, oh sir, revered sir, can you please unfold that again? Because he didn't understand. And then again and again. And he only said this 8 times. That means 9 classes. And so, it's not meant for comparison. Because understand that when that comparison takes place, what is it that is doing the comparison is what needs to be addressed. what is doing the comparison is part of that patina. So instead, characters in the Upanishad like Yajnavalkya, Maitreyi, Shvetaketu, etc. are to be seen as role models to aspire to follow. And then it is seen and understood in the way that it is meant, so that we don't, I don't know how else to say it, run the pattern in our study of the Upanishad. This is important. So, the Upanishad has a wide array of Uttama Adhikaris. Some of them did not even need teaching, hardly. Like Satyakama, a young fellow who goes to the teacher and he's very, very, very brilliant. Brilliant not just in the sense of having, what's the word for it? Brains or intellect. Brilliant in the sense of having hardly any ragadveshas, a clear antahkarna, transparent, free of the fog of, the overlay of patterns, some of them very deep set. And he was available for the knowledge. But yet, he was not spared from cow duty. You know cow duty? Think about that. If he had to go to cow duty, what does it say for us? So he goes to the teacher and he says, I would like to gain this knowledge. And the teacher hands him one cow, just one cow. He doesn't even know whether it's male or female. And he's told, don't come back until it becomes 1,000. And it's not just adding zeros. One is there and I'll add 3 zeros. No. Don't come back, the teacher says. In other times we have seen the key to the cowshed is given. For the student who was aspiring, the key to how to lead the life. This is not the key to Satchidananda, it is the key to what? The stables. That's why it's called stable, because that's where you go to get stability. Because who goes in the stable is very unstable as a student. So here, such a brilliant student, and we don't know if it's the same Satyakama in the other Upanishad, but it sounds to be the same, who was raised by a single mother, Jabala, and who didn't know who his father was. And he desired to go to the Gurukula, and it was some kind of a open house where they were doing all kinds of interviews, and he sought his mother's blessings. He says, I'm going to go, I'd like to go, but they'll ask the father's name. Who was my father? Who is my father? She says, I really don't know. You've been busy working as a maid in so many people's houses. I have no idea who your father is. And he goes, and in front of all the students and all the parents that had come to leave the students there, when asked by the teacher, what is your gotra, what is your lineage, who is your father? And the mother also tells him, but you tell everybody that you are Jabala's son, and you take my last name. From now on, you are known as Satyakama Jabala. Perhaps the first instance of the mother giving her last name in history. And he goes and he repeats exactly, without any shame, without any pride, without any worries. He just repeats it. He says, my mother worked in many people's houses, so she doesn't know who the father is, but she told me that she has raised me to be an honest boy, and my name is Satyakama Jabala, so for my last name you write my mother's name. And the teacher is so happy. He has tears in his eyes. He embraces the young boy and he says, if you are not qualified for this knowledge, I don't know who is. And then later on in the same Upanishad, we see him asking the teacher for this knowledge, presumably after studying the chanting and all these other things, doing the first portion of the Veda. And the teacher says, this is a different story of the same boy, perhaps. And the teacher says, don't come back till this one cow is 1,000. And even someone as brilliant as Satyakama sits down because he's a little depressed. He's like, what is this? When will this cow become 1,000? I hope it's pregnant. We don't know. I hope it's expecting at least one baby. How am I going to go back? But a lot of things come to his aid. First he meets, he has a strange kind of a ferocious meow, and he wonders what it is. And it's an injured lion with a big thorn or a nail in its paw that's getting septic. And not a very nice sight because, it's in pain, but it's a lion. And the lion tells him, why are you looking so sad? You're such a small, cute boy with a cow. Why do you look so sad? And he says, because, I have to make this cow into 1,000. And, he also perhaps said, and maybe you are looking at it as your lunch. And where will I go? So the cow says, you know what, we just grow mutually. And right now I have this thorn in my paw. You remove it. And I'll teach you about Brahman. Don't worry, you want Brahman. I'll teach you a little bit. And this brave boy goes and yanks out the nail out of the foot of the lion. And he gets a little lesson in Brahman, whatever the lion knew. Unlike this, then he meets, we have 2-3 things like this. Then he meets a crane with a fish bone stuck in its throat. Same thing. A heron. And he removes the bone and learns a little more about Brahman. And then he meets, forget the third one, he also helps another animal or tree or plant in distress and gets another piece of this knowledge. And then, miraculously, there is an abandoned herd of cows. And he looks to the left, looks to the right. Is there anybody there? Who does it belong to? And he watches them for a whole day and they don't seem to have an owner. And he says, come on, boys and girls. And they obediently follow him. And he goes to the teacher. And the teacher is so thrilled with him. And the teacher says, your face shines with knowledge. Tell me what you know. And he says, no, you tell me what you know. That's why I'm here. A very beautiful story. And what we learn from this is that, what patterns, what habit, where? It's just, it's all to show that the teaching is not difficult. It's very simple. And life itself is a teacher in the sense of, not Shvetaketu, what's his name? Satyakama's, encounters with the animals. The lion is a, sign of ferociousness, anger, intractable emotions, which he conquered. He conquered the fear of those by attending to that. And the heron is a sign of, both patience, because it waits for a long time, and also a certain kind of a avarice, greed, because it ate fast and indiscriminately put things down its throat, could not assimilate, could not stomach it, So like this, it's going, all that happens in a week in his life, but we have to see that this is a kind of a wonderful blueprint to show how one's encounter with all the things in the Jagat, animate, inanimate, people, objects, are very important and can teach one to go deeper in this study, in this knowledge. So we'll come back to this a little later. But for now, this is what is the Uttama Adhikari. The Uttama Adhikari appears to need only Shravanam. Shravanameva Mukhya Sadhanam Mokshaya. Understood, right? Yeah. So can I just talk in Sanskrit the rest of the talk? Yeah. Mukhya Sadhanam, the primary means, Mokshaya, for liberation, for freedom. From what? From these very, sticky patterns that we are talking about. Very sticky. Like tar, So freedom from samsara is freedom from patterns. That's what reproduces samsara. It's a proliferation that is happening within the ahankara, not without. Within the antahkarana. And so, therefore, mokshaya, for liberation, from what? From these patterns. Shravanam eva alam, enough. Shravanam itself is enough, is the sufficient and necessary cause for freedom from samsara. What is Shravanam? Listening to what? Music. Yeah. What kind of teachings? Yeah. The teachings of the Upanishad, handled by somebody who has been taught. That is important. Because otherwise you just sit and listen to the teachings and nothing happens, and then that's because, we have to look at how it is handled, if it is handled at all. So, that is enough for liberation. This is what we get from the Upanishads. That's why the adhikaris don't appear to need anything else. Because the Upanishad is not trying to compare the adhikaris and say, we have Shvetaketu, you don't have that, and you can never be Shvetaketus, and down with the modern adhikaris. That's not what the Upanishad is trying to say. Neither is the Upanishad trying to set up some kind of a impossible act to follow. That's not its purport and its intention. The purport and intention of the Upanishad in repeatedly showcasing these Uttama Adhikaris, these exalted students of knowledge, is to drive home the fact that listening to Vedanta is the primary cause for freedom from bondage, from the notion of bondage, and is the sufficient cause. Nothing more is needed. Shravanam is it. Then, supposing someone says, Shravanam isn't enough. There is a little scope to say that. Also, there is space made to say that. There is space made to see that because we see that clearly in Yajnavalkya and Maitreyi dialogue. Atma vai are drashtavyah. The Atma has to be seen means as though clearly, as though you're looking at it. Not that you have to look at it because you can't, it's you. But the Atma has to be clearly seen, as in clearly understood. Darshanaya kim kartavyam. What should I do to be able to, as though, see it clearly? Atma va are shrotavyah. Are means honey. He's talking to his wife. Atma vai are shrotavyah. So what should I do? In order to understand the Atma, I have to listen to it. And when that is not enough, so that should be enough, because we see the example, of Shvetaketus, Satyakamas, so many, students. Indra, Narada, everybody. We see them gaining this knowledge after, 1 or 2 classes and getting up and going. So, supposing the Shravanam is not enough, then obviously there is something in the way. There is something not quite right. With what? With the teacher? Possible. If so, change the teacher. But if the teacher is fine, there is no need to change the teacher. Then what? Then we have to see what is the inhibiting factor that is standing in the way of my enjoying this knowledge. Atmavare mantavyah mananam kartavyah. So do this thing called mananam, which is not instead of Shravanam, because mananam without Shravanam is dangerous. Mananam means meditation, thinking and having opinions about the Upanishad. Without Shravanam is bad, because that means you are trying to interpret the Upanishads with the same patina that you are wanting to get rid of. How is that going to work? So mananam means, the removal of what we talked yesterday, or day before, samshaya. The word samshaya, sam, very well, shaya, sleeping. We think of doubts as active. And actively, drilling a hole in the brain and not letting us concentrate and worrying and whatnot. But the Upanishad has its own way, the language has its own way of defining the word doubt. Doubt means where you're sleeping to your nature. That's all it is. Nicely sleeping to the reality that one is supposed to be living. Samyak shayanam, really. So samshaya is doubt, and the removal of doubt is an important process when the Shravanam is not enough. Don't say when the Shravanam does not work. It works. It's working. But, it's like, one is not like that Bob, the one who is got a sponge. What is it? So, one is not like that sponge to absorb. So, what if there is, instead of a sponge, there is something that is actually repelling the knowledge? Not only not absorbing, but repelling, because there is a covering that whatever. And so that means the first way of dealing with this is doubt removal. Samshaya nivritti. And the doubt removal is always during, asking questions, talking about what is one not understood, And usually the same people will have the same questions forever. And we see this in Arjuna. Same question. The question that starts in the 3rd chapter, beginning of the 3rd chapter. That's how it starts. Oh, that doesn't sound like Sanskrit. I'm translating it. I'm doing an emotional translation. That's exactly how it sounds. Jayasi chet karmanaste mata buddhir janardana tatkim karmani gore mam niyojasi keshava yamishreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasi vame tadekam madanishchitya yena shreyo ham apnuyam. Doesn't need a translation. You got it. I told you I can get away with talking in Sanskrit the rest of the time. Oh, if you say that karma binds and knowledge frees, why are you asking me to do this terrible karma? Which has made me freeze instead of made me free. So 3rd chapter. 5th chapter. Same thing again. Same question. Now he dresses it up a little bit. He's wearing a frock, So, tell me about sannyasa. If the whole point is to give everything up, why do I have to do this? Why do I have to fight? Why can't I just, Kurukshetra, which is on the outskirts of Delhi, and Haridwar, where half the people are in orange, is not very far. I can go there, sit under a tree. That's what I want. He didn't want that for the last 12 years when he could have wanted that. He was sitting in a forest, chafing at the bit to get to Duryodhana and slay him. He was so bloodthirsty. And his wife Draupadi was even more bloodthirsty than him, literally, because she had been, her reputation has been desecrated in this big sabha, in this big assembly. She had been dragged by Duryodhana's brother, Dushasana. Please understand, nobody names their children Dushasana, badly behaved. His name must have been Sushasana, but because of his behavior, it became Dushasana. Similarly, Duryodhana must have been Suyodhana, and it has changed in keeping in accordance with their demeanors and behaviors. Sushasana was never Sushasana, unless, of course, the parents were really prophetic. You're just bad news, maybe they saw it at birth, we don't know. So, Duryodhana's brother Dushasana had dragged her by the hair, and and Duryodhana had touched his lap and in sign language and said, "Come and sit here." So she had not forgotten those insults. So she said, "I'm not going to comb my hair unless I have the oil infused with their blood." Literally. That's how I'm going to dress my hair, and until then I'm not going to comb my hair. So she just grew dreadlocks for 12 years in the forest. So these are the people, they didn't want this knowledge. They were kshatriyas, they were fighters, warriors, they were doing what they were wanting to do. So, suddenly for him to want this knowledge is suspicious at best. Not just this knowledge he can want, but suddenly for him to want this lifestyle which is leaving everything and going into the forest is suspicious, because he was already in the forest. And he came across so many Mahapurushas, so many Mahatmas. He could have said, and if he had told Krishna, "I don't want to fight, I just want this knowledge," nobody would have said, "Come back and fight." So this is what was suspicious. So the whole of chapter 5 goes by because he's, constantly asking this question Why can't I become a renunciate from this war? Not in my lifestyle, but from this war right now. And in order to let go of this war, if the only way to overcome this is to become a renunciant, let me do that. So then the 5th chapter goes by, 6th chapter goes by, 7th chapter goes by, 8th chapter, 9th chapter, 10th chapter, 11th chapter goes by, 12th chapter, same question comes back again, same question. Now in addition to a frock, it's wearing overalls. That's all it is. It's getting a little more dressed up. That's what it is. Tesham ke yoga vittamaha. People relate to you in different ways. Oh Arjuna, oh Krishna, Arjuna says. Evam satata yukta ye bhaktas tvam parupasate. So many bhaktas are there. Which bhaktas are better? Which bhaktas are better? See, the comparison is already there. Those who see you as formless or those who worship forms, who is better? Krishna is not going to fall into that trap. So as a result, the 12th chapter is extremely confusing if you don't read it from with the eyes of the Pramana and Vedanta, really. You can go away thinking wrong things. And the question, even after so many chapters of teaching, has not gone because it's back in the 12th chapter again. Even in the 18th chapter, it is back. Tell me about Tyaga, how to leave things. What do you want to leave? This war, of course. So from that we can take heart. If we are all having the same question, it's a good sign. We are following in the footsteps of Arjuna, which is nice. So that same question means the same samshaya. And that same samshaya, if it is there, year after year after year, it indicates that there is a pattern out of which the same kinds of questions are arising. There is something, we have to see the wellspring, that which is feeding this question has to be looked at. So this is Mananam, asking questions, part A of Mananam. Part B of Mananam is to allow oneself to ask the questions in the light of whatever one has studied, and the answer does come. And so, meditating upon the Upanishads, how come it's like this here and like that there, and sort of, using the brains, but in keeping, anukula, in keeping with the Shruti. Yukti, logic, is used. Shruti, anukula yukti. Yukti means logic. Shruti means the teachings. Shruti anukula yukti, a logic that proceeds in accordance with what I have studied. Not a logic that defies what I have studied, because there is a problem there if it does that. Then you're better off asking questions. So this is called Mananam. Atma vai are mantavyaha. Mananam, 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 mentation. And then what? Still the promise of the Upanishads seems to be a promise out there somewhere, hanging in the ether. Self-knowledge and the fruits of self-knowledge, at least in this lifetime, may not be for me. This is the wise person talking. Wizened up to the fact. This is a wise person, because even underneath that, the current of lament is a truth. There is a truth. What is the truth? I'm not enjoying what the Upanishad says I should be enjoying by now. The last I checked, it has been more than 9 classes that I have attended. So there should be something. Kuch na kuch, it should be there, and I'm not enjoying that. And what is wrong with me? What is wrong with this? Something is wrong. So underneath the lament is a wise, observation. If one is able to make it, something is not right. Atma va are, Atma vai are, nididhyasitavyaha. Nididhyasanam, long word for contemplation. So technically the samshaya, the samshaya means what? Doubts. The doubts are twofold in nature, they say. Pramanagata samshaya and prameyagata samshaya. Pramanagata samshaya means doubts with regard to the means of knowledge. How can this free me? Why not some other way? Why not I touch the nose and become enlightened? To the fact that I have a nose. No. Why can't I touch the nose and know I am Satchidananda? Why can't I touch the toes, either mine or the Guru's, and know and know that I am Satchidananda, that I am free of all afflictions and all kinds of things. These are examples of Pramanagata Samshaya. Why I have to have a teacher? Why I have to study this? Why a committed exposure? Why this? Why? This is questioning the Pramana. How come it works? Why does it work? How come it's not worked for me? And that means it is not there. This is Pramanagata Samshaya. What if the teacher is, mistaken? What if the teacher is not teaching me properly? What if the teacher's personal life is horrible and then they are trying to teach this? How will I learn? This is all Pramanagata Samshaya. And the second kind of doubt is what is called Prameyagata Samshaya, which Mananam should address. Prameya means, that which the Pramana reveals is Prameya. So what is Prameya? What does the Pramana reveal? Self as what? Ishvara. So Prameya, that which is to be known is Ishvara. So Prameyagata Samshaya, Ishvara, Shmishvara, Vedanta, Shmedanta. Where is this Ishvara? Big deal. So many people go without knowing this Ishvara. So what? If I also don't know, so what? Why? And then on top of that, I am this Ishvara. Why should I know this Ishvara? I know myself enough. Today Ishvara is mad. Today Ishvara is sad. Enough. And so this is what is called Prameyagata Samshaya. And this is what Mananam, the second line of remedy, when Shravanam doesn't work, when Shravanam is not sufficient, should take care of these two kinds of samshayas. If that doesn't happen, then the place where those samshayas are arising from have to be looked at, and that looking deeply into the source of those patterns which are churning out these kinds of feelings. I'm not worthy of this knowledge. What Ishvara? How can I be this Ishvara? And what is this, who is this teacher? Why this way? Why all this? That has to be deeply looked at, loved up and integrated. And that is the real meaning of nididhyasanam, aka Viparita Bhavana Nivritti. Viparita means opposite. Bhavana, feelings, experiences. Experiences, feelings, thought, patterns that are opposite to what? Opposite to the teachings. Completely opposed to the teachings, my feelings are. The teaching is saying you are the whole, there is nothing more you need and you are fine and everything is fine. But I feel unfine or unrefined and I feel like an idiot and I feel like I don't deserve this knowledge. No wonder the knowledge is not talking to me because, it's just all nice in the books and nice to listen to once in a while, but that's the extent of my engagement with this knowledge. Somehow, to put it in English, one finds that one has plateaued. Plateaued means flat line, plateau. In the beginning, the Vedanta classes are, woohoo, yay, yippee. I'm Brahman. And while saying that, one gets a catch on the side. I'm Brahman. So in the beginning, there's a lot of, activity. And then after that, there seems to be a flat line. Plateaued. Nothing is exciting. Life is boring. Boredom is really not an emotion, It is a indicator of certain emotions being buried, which should not be, which should be looked at. So, but what one has access to is only this long, endless boredom, which one confuses for a feeling. And this boredom means like there is a certain kind of an apathy. Apathy towards life, apathy towards, of course, the Shastra, apathy towards the family, apathy towards the work, Nothing is exciting, nothing is interesting. And then there is a notice that comes in the email, some Vedanta classes will be there. Because one has already decided, what can that do for me? Nothing. Why should I go? Why should I make the effort to go? Because what's the point? What is the point? Nothing will happen because I've already studied, been there, done that. And then I've studied also the 6th chapter of the Gita, which suggests that I have been there and done that in other ways, in other lives. Oh my God, how depressing. If I haven't got it in the last 3 lives, what's the guarantee I'll get it now? So forget it. Why even attempt? The teacher you see coming, you duck under a bush. Hold the breath for good measure. You love the teacher, of course. But there is such a deep sense of disappointment, mixed in with a salad dressing of shame that you just cannot face it. Can't face yourself. And facing the teacher is facing yourself, really. The teacher is a walking, talking mirror. So on a bad hair day, you don't want to look in the mirror. Nobody does. And then, when one is uncombed, unraveled, nididhyasana wise speaking, because of the source of these doubts are not addressed, then one cannot encounter the teacher or the Shastra. Both the Shastra is a mirror, the teacher is a mirror, both are mirrors. What do we do now? This is a very big impasse. And this is not something that is, touched upon deeply in the Upanishad. Because the Upanishad gives a lot of leeway to address this issue for ourselves. And the Upanishad is a lady of few words which have to be understood. She just gives a sign and we have to understand that and unpack that. And in India, ancient India, when we read the bhashyas, the vartikas, various kinds of commentaries to the Bhagavad Gita, etc., they talk about raga dveshas, they talk about it only to a certain extent. Mandukya Karika addresses it a little bit. Addresses things that come in the way of listening, things that come in the way of meditation. But again, it's in the matter of 4 lines in a verse. That's why we are very, very, very fortunate that, Pujya Swamiji's teachings went deeply into the emotional realm from the standpoint of modern psychology. So that we can use the Upanishad, the wisdom of the Upanishad, in the light of this modern psychology and understand it fully as it relates to one's life, so that one can make progress, where one can come out of this impasse. Very, very fortunate. I can't tell you what a big blessing it is. And he himself understood this blessing. Because in teaching, one time, he was giving a talk on the 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, and what he liked to call raga dvesha psychology. And he said, I haven't done too badly, have I? I have done good, he said. And he said, if Adi Shankara were to manifest right now, right here, I think he would pat me on the back and say, good boy. It was so beautiful. It was said without a whit of pride. It was just a fact. It is really a fact. That he has furthered this sampradaya, the parampara. That's why the parampara is so important. The parampara has thrived under him, and under his able hands and way of teaching this, the parampara has not just thrived, has added a new way of looking at things. And it has just blossomed, really, and changed the trajectory of this teaching, really. Because I have gone to, so many places. He would send us. When I was in Rishikesh, he would say, don't just sit in my class. Let me tell you a few other teachers that you can just go and sit. He would make us go. Go to Kailas Ashram today. Go sit there and we could barely sit there. And we would come running back. I mean, not that they were teaching badly, they were teaching the same things, but that there was something there which Pujya Swamiji made it alive and relevant. That's the whole point. That relevance to one's life was not there. It was the stock teaching. Completely in keeping with the Shastra, authentic, stock and ancient teaching, but there was not that adaptability to one's, situation. So what is it that does not allow the meditation to take place? And the meditation or the questioning to go deeply and to address the pramana-gata samshaya and the prameya-gata samshayas, these doubts centered on either the pramana or the means of knowledge or Ishvara, what is to be understood as the truth of oneself. That is what has to be examined. And that is a deeper, what is that called? A deeper inquiry. And literally it's a self-enquiry because it's an inquiry into that which I have assumed to be the self. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Harihi Om.